3 silver stars on midnight blue. I ran my thumb across them one last time before the mirror, feeling the raised edges like Braille telling a story only I could read. 22 years, 3 combat deployments, 1 Purple Heart I never talk about, and in exactly 14 minutes I was going to walk down the aisle of the Fort Bragg Chapel in this uniform instead of a white dress, and my sister was going to lose her mind. She already had, actually. The text came in at 6:47 that morning before I'd even finished my coffee. "You're really doing this? Wearing your little costume to your own wedding? God, Keisha, even on your big day you have to make it about yourself." I didn't respond. I'd learned a long time ago that responding to Tamara was like feeding a fire you were trying to put out. My phone buzzed again, then 3 more times in rapid succession. Mom would be rolling in her grave. "Daddy already told me he thinks it's tacky. Everyone's going to be laughing at you. You know that, right? But I guess that's what you want. Attention. Like always. Don't say I didn't warn you." I set the phone face down on the vanity and looked at myself in the mirror. Brigadier General Keisha Rhodes, United States Army, 1 star. The first Black woman to earn that star in the 18 Airborne Corps. And according to my older sister, a clown in a costume. The thing is, Tamara and I weren't always like this. There's a photo somewhere. I think my grandmother still has it, of us at maybe 4 and 6 years old, sitting on the porch of our house in Fayetteville sharing a popsicle. Grape. You can tell because it's all over both our faces. We're laughing about something, heads tilted toward each other, and you'd look at that photo and think those two are going to be best friends forever. You'd be wrong. It started small, the way these things always do. I was the tomboy, Tamara was the princess. She did pageants, I did track. She wore lip gloss to church, I wore my Sunday dress like it was a punishment. And somewhere along the way, my father decided that Tamara was the daughter he understood, and I was the one he tolerated. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" That was his favorite line. I heard it so many times it stopped hurting by the time I was 12. Or maybe I just got better at pretending it didn't. When I told my parents I was enlisting at 18, my father laughed. Not a mean laugh, exactly. More like the laugh you give when a child says they're going to be an astronaut. Amused. Dismissive. The laugh of a man who'd already decided what his daughters were capable of. "The Army," he said, shaking his head. "Baby girl, you can't even keep your room clean." Tamara was 20, home from community college for the weekend, and she laughed too. Harder than him. "Oh my God, you're serious? You're going to do push-ups and shoot guns? You?" My mother was the only one who didn't laugh. She was already sick by then, though we didn't know how sick. She pulled me aside that night, her hand on my cheek, her eyes doing that thing where they looked right through you. "If this is what you want," she said, "then you go. And you don't look back." She died 7 months later, breast cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it. I was in basic training at Fort Jackson when the Red Cross message came through. They gave me emergency leave, and I made it home in time to hold her hand for the last 2 days. Tamara blamed me for not being there sooner, as if I could have willed the cancer away if I'd just been standing in the right room. That was the first crack. The real one. Everything before was just surface fractures. Basic training nearly broke me. I won't romanticize it. There were nights I lay on my bunk staring at the ceiling and wondering what the hell I was doing. I was 5'4", 128 pounds, and Drill Sergeant Kimball's seemed personally offended by my existence. "Rhodes, you call that a push-up? My grandmother does better push-ups and she's been dead for 6 years. I did more push-ups. I ran faster. I shot straighter. Not because I was naturally talented. Plenty of people were more naturally talented. I did it because every time I wanted to quit, I heard my father's laugh and my sister's voice, and something inside me turned to iron. I graduated basic, then AIT, then airborne school because apparently I had a taste for doing things people said I couldn't do. The day I got my jump wings, I called home and told my father. "That's nice, baby," he said. "Hey, did I tell you Tamara got engaged? He's a dentist. Real good guy." That was it. 3 years of training, my first deployment to Iraq coming up in 6 weeks, and my father wanted to talk about Tamara's fiance's dental practice. Iraq taught me things I still can't talk about in polite company. My first deployment was 2005, Mosul, and the insurgency was at its peak. I was a second lieutenant leading a logistics platoon, which sounds boring until you realize that every convoy was a potential ambush. I lost my first soldier on a Tuesday. Specialist Devonte Hicks, 20 years old, from Savannah, Georgia. An IED en route Tampa. I wrote the letter to his mother, and my hand shook so badly, the first 3 drafts were illegible. Tamara called me on a satellite phone 2 weeks after Devonte died. I was sitting on a concrete barrier outside the TOC, trying to eat an MRE that tasted like cardboard seasoned with dust. "So I need you to send money for the wedding flowers," she said. "No hello? No how are you? No are you safe over there? Daddy said you're getting combat pay so you can afford it." I sent the money. $1,200. I don't know why. Maybe because I was too tired to fight. Maybe because some stupid part of me still thought that if I just did enough, gave enough, was enough, my family would finally see me. They never did. I came home from that deployment with a combat action badge, and the beginning of something dark and heavy that I didn't have a name for yet. The nightmares started 6 months later. I'd be driving down Bragg Boulevard, and a piece of trash on the shoulder would make my heart rate spike to 160 because in Mosul, trash on the road meant death. I didn't tell anyone. I was a captain by then, and captains weren't supposed to wake up screaming. Captains weren't supposed to pull over on the highway because their hands were shaking too badly to steer. Captains weren't supposed to sit in the shower at 3 a.m. with the water going cold, crying so hard they couldn't breathe. My second deployment was Afghanistan, 2009. Kandahar. Worse than Mosul in ways I didn't think were possible. I lost 4 soldiers that tour, 4 letters, 4 families. 4 funerals I attended in my dress blues, standing at attention while mothers collapsed and fathers aged 10 years in 10 minutes. When I came home from Kandahar, Tamara was divorced. The dentist had left her for his hygienist, which was so cliché, it would have been funny if Tamara hadn't been so destroyed by it. And here's the thing about me that I've never been able to fix. Even after everything, I still loved her. She was my sister. So I drove down to her apartment in Raleigh, and I held her while she cried, and I listened to her talk about how she'd wasted 5 years of her life, and how all men were trash, and how she didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't mention the 4 soldiers I'd lost. I didn't mention the nightmares or the shaking hands, or the fact that I'd started seeing a therapist on post and was working through something PTSD that made every loud noise feel like incoming fire. I just held my sister and let her cry. A week later, she posted on Facebook, "Some people get to run away and play soldier while the rest of us deal with real life." I read it twice, sitting in my car in the Fort Bragg parking lot. Then I put my phone in the glove compartment and went to work. The years blurred after that, the way they do when you're running hard. Major, Lieutenant Colonel, command of a battalion. I deployed again, this time to Syria, and when I came back, I had a Bronze Star and a permanent ringing in my left ear from a mortar that landed 30 feet from my position. Tamara, meanwhile, had remarried, a car salesman named Terrence. They had a daughter, Amaya, who I adored even though Tamara made it nearly impossible for me to see her. Every family gathering became a performance where Tamara was the star and I was the prop she used to make herself feel better. Keisha doesn't have kids because she chose guns over family. Keisha can't keep a man because she's too busy bossing people around. Keisha thinks she's better than us because she's got all those medals. My father never corrected her, not once. He'd just shake his head and change the subject, which was its own kind of wound. Then I met Jarrett. He was a civilian, a structural engineer who'd done contract work on base. We met at a Habitat for Humanity build in Spring Lake, both of us covered in drywall dust and arguing about the best way to frame a doorway. He was 6'2", quiet, and had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our first date was at a barbecue place off Yadkin Road. We talked for 4 hours. He didn't flinch when I told him about the deployments or the PTSD. He just nodded and said, "That sounds really heavy. Thank you for trusting me with it." I think I knew then, the way you know some things. Not in your head, but in the part of your chest that doesn't lie. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on the porch of a cabin in the Smokies, and I said yes before he finished the question, and we both laughed because it wasn't smooth at all, just real. When I told my father, he said, "About time." When I told Tamara, she said, "I hope you're not going to wear your uniform. That would be so embarrassing." I hadn't decided yet, actually, but something about the way she said it, the sneer in her voice, the assumption that my uniform was something to be ashamed of, made the decision for me. I was a brigadier general. I had earned every thread of that uniform, and I was going to wear it on the most important day of my life because it was part of who I was, and I was done pretending otherwise. The wedding was at the Main Post Chapel at Fort Bragg. Jarrett's idea. He wanted it there because he said it was where I belonged, and he wanted to marry me in a place that meant something. We planned for 200 guests, about half military, half civilian. Jarrett's family was coming from Philadelphia, a big Italian-Filipino family who hugged too hard and cooked too much and accepted me from day one in a way my own family never had. Tamara's campaign to sabotage the wedding started 3 months out. First, she told our father I was forcing everyone to come to a military base, like it was a prison. Then she told Jarrett's mother that I was difficult and controlling and that the marriage wouldn't last. Then she called the florist, pretending to be me, and tried to cancel the arrangements. The florist called me to confirm, confused, and I had to sit in my office at Corps headquarters, staring at satellite imagery of troop movements in Eastern Europe, and explain to a woman named Beatrice that my sister was trying to ruin my wedding. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Tamara sent a group text to every family member she had a number for. I wasn't on it, but my cousin Yolanda screenshotted it and sent it to me. "Just want everyone to know that Keisha is planning to wear her military uniform to her wedding. Not a dress, not a gown, her work clothes. I'm honestly embarrassed for her. She's always been like this, always needing everyone to see how special she is. Daddy agrees it's inappropriate. I'm going anyway because she's my sister, but don't expect me to act like this is normal." I read it sitting next to Jarrett on the couch. He read it over my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to marry you," I said, in my dress blues, with my star on my shoulder. "And I don't care what she thinks about it." He kissed my forehead. "Then that's what we're doing." The morning of the wedding, my dress blues were pressed and hanging on the back of the bathroom door. I'd had them tailored the week before, every crease sharp enough to cut. The star on my shoulder caught the bathroom light and threw tiny reflections on the ceiling. And I stood there in my robe watching them dance. That's when Tamara's texts started. The ones I mentioned at the beginning. 6 messages in 4 minutes, each one a small grenade designed to make me doubt myself. I got dressed alone. No bridesmaids, no fussing. Just me and the mirror and 22 years of service. I buttoned the jacket, adjusted the star, checked the alignment of my ribbons, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Each one a story, each one a scar. My cousin Yolanda knocked on the door at 10:15. "Girl," she said, looking me up and down, "you look like you're about to command a whole army." "Just one chapel," I said, "for about an hour." She laughed. Then she got serious. "Tamara's out there. She's already making comments." "Of course she is. Your daddy's sitting with her. He hasn't said anything, but he's got that look." I knew the look. The one that said he wished I was different. I'd been seeing it for 35 years. I'm ready, I said. The chapel at Fort Bragg is beautiful in a way that civilians don't expect military things to be. High ceilings, stained glass, wooden pews that smell like lemon oil and history. When I got to the anteroom, I could hear the murmur of 200 people on the other side of the doors. And for a moment, just a moment, I was scared. Not of getting married, of walking through those doors and seeing my father's disappointment, of hearing whatever Tamara was going to say, of being myself, fully and completely, in front of people who'd spent my whole life wishing I was someone else. Then the doors opened. The first thing I saw was Jarrett. He was standing at the altar in a dark navy suit, and when he saw me, his face did this thing, this softening, like every hard thing in the world had just melted away. His eyes got wet. He didn't try to hide it. The second thing I saw was the pews. Both sides were full. Jarrett's family on the right, a riot of color and warmth, and on the left, 200 soldiers, officers, and NCOs in their dress blues, sitting ramrods straight, my soldiers. People I'd served with, commanded, bled beside. I stepped through the doorway, and then it happened. Colonel Whitfield, my former XO, was sitting in the front row on the left. He saw me first. He stood, snapped to attention. The sound of his heels clicking together echoed off the stone floor. Then the row behind him stood, then the next, then the next. It moved like a wave, front to back, a ripple of blue and gold, 200 soldiers rising to their feet in perfect, unified silence. The civilians on Jarrett's side looked confused for a moment, then awed, then emotional. Jarrett's mother put her hand over her mouth, and then Colonel Whitfield's voice, clear as a bell, carrying across that chapel like a command from God himself. "General on deck!" 200 voices answered in unison. "Hoos!" The sound hit me in the chest, not like a mortar, like the opposite of a mortar. Like every broken thing inside me suddenly being held by 200 pairs of hands. I didn't cry. Generals don't cry. That's what I told myself as my vision blurred and my throat closed, and I had to stop walking for a moment because my legs weren't working right. I looked to my right. My father was sitting in the third row, his mouth slightly open. He wasn't laughing now. He was looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Like all those years of dismissal had just been peeled back, and what was underneath was something he didn't know how to process. And Tamara was sitting next to him, her face frozen in an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not jealousy, something deeper, something that looked almost like recognition, like she was finally understanding that the little sister she'd spent 30 years belittling was not the person she'd decided I was. I walked down that aisle. I walked past my father and my sister and 30 years of being told I wasn't enough. I walked past the ghosts of Devante and the 4 soldiers from Kandahar and every nightmare that had ever woken me at 3 a.m. I walked past the girl who used to cry in the shower and the captain who couldn't drive down Bragg Boulevard without shaking. I walked to Jarrett, and when I got there, when I took his hands and looked into his eyes, I wasn't a general. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't the daughter who disappointed her father or the sister who embarrassed Tamara. I was just Keisha, standing in front of the man she loved, wearing the uniform that had saved her life. The ceremony was short. Jarrett and I had written our own vows. His made me laugh. Mine made him cry. The chaplain pronounced us married. And when Jarrett kissed me, 200 soldiers erupted in the loudest, most undisciplined cheer that chapel had ever heard, and I loved every second of it. At the reception, my father found me. He was standing by the dessert table, holding a plate he hadn't touched, looking like a man who had a lot to say and no idea how to say it. "Keisha, Daddy." He was quiet for a long time, then he said, "I didn't know. All those people, all those soldiers, I didn't know they respected me?" He flinched, just slightly, like the word had landed somewhere tender. "I'm sorry," he said, and I could tell it cost him everything. My father was not a man who apologized. He was a man who changed the subject, who let silence do his talking, who loved in ways so quiet you could miss them if you weren't paying attention. "It's okay, Daddy." "No," he said. "It's not. Your mother would have been so proud of you." I should have said that a long time ago. I hugged him, right there by the German chocolate cake and the lemon squares. And for the first time in maybe ever, he hugged me back like he meant it. Tamara didn't come to the reception. I found out later that she'd left right after the ceremony. My cousin Yolanda said she walked out of the chapel, got in her car, and sat there for 20 minutes before driving away. She didn't slam the door. She didn't make a scene. She just left. She didn't call me for 3 months after the wedding. When she finally did, it was a Tuesday evening. Jarrett and I were making dinner, some pasta thing he'd learned from his mother, and my phone rang and it was Tamara's name on the screen, and I almost didn't answer, but I did. Because she was my sister. "I'm not going to apologize," she said, which was such a Tamara thing to say that I almost smiled. "Okay," I said, "but I'm not going to do that anymore." The texts, the comments. "I'm done." "Okay." I could hear Amaya in the background, singing something from a Disney movie. "Those soldiers," Tamara said. "When they all stood up, I didn't." She stopped. I waited. "I never understood what you did," she said finally. "I just saw you leaving, over and over. You left for basic, you left for Iraq, you left for Afghanistan. You kept leaving, and I kept thinking you were choosing them over us." "Tamara, let me finish. I know that's not what it was. I think I've known for a long time. I just didn't want to admit that my little sister was braver than me, that she went and did something that actually mattered while I was worrying about flower arrangements and Facebook posts." I leaned against the kitchen counter. Jarrett looked at me, eyebrows raised. I shook my head slightly. "I'm okay. You matter, Tamara," I said. "You've always mattered." "Yeah," she said, "but not the way you do. Not like that." We didn't fix everything in that phone call. We didn't fix everything in the next 10 phone calls either. Some things take years to repair, and some things never fully heal. The scar tissue is always there, tougher than the original skins, but not as flexible. But we started, slowly, carefully, the way you approach a wound you've been ignoring for too long. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still flinch at car backfires and avoid the 4th of July. I still see Dr. Abrams every other Thursday at 2 p.m., and I still take the medication, and I still do the breathing exercises, and some days they work and some days they don't. PTSD doesn't have a finish line. It's not a deployment you come home from. It's a roommate that never leaves, and the best you can do is learn to live with it in a way that doesn't destroy you. But here's what I know now that I didn't know at 18. Standing in my childhood bedroom with an enlistment contract and a mother's blessing and a father's laugh, the people who share your blood are not always the people who see your worth. Sometimes the family you earn, the one forged in boot camp and combat and shared sacrifice, is the one that stands for you, literally stands. 200 soldiers in dress blues on their feet because you walked into a room. And sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're patient, if you keep the door open even when every instinct tells you to lock it, the family you were born into starts to see it too. My name is Keisha Rhodes. I am a brigadier general in the United States Army. I am a combat veteran, a wife, a daughter, a sister, and a survivor of things I don't always have words for. I wore my uniform to my wedding, and I would do it again tomorrow and every day after that. Because this uniform was never a costume. It was never a cry for attention. It was the truest thing I ever wore. And on that day, in that chapel, surrounded by the people who knew exactly what it meant, it was the most beautiful thing in the room.